right. That's a project, just I don't know, later on in life, well, later on in my young educational experience, um, as I began to read and as I began to do math and as I began to find success in those things, I found inspirational people along the way who
Mm.
who kind of started triggering maybe this is a path I should go into. Um, I had a non-official mentor um, guiding me, and I remember one time him telling me, because I was working with him, and I said, I'm interested in doing something like this, and he says, well, why would you do manual labor when you can use your brain? Your brain lasts longer than manual labor, and um, it triggered something to me like, wow, you're so right.
Future risers, you know when you hear the sound, you know the voice, you know who's on. We have not been going for a long time. Videos that we just posted, a matter of fact, yesterday. So we have not been going long and we have given you the information. We are still looking for you to engage. I mean, now I just put it on the screen, a banner that says subscribe. I'm not quite sure what else y'all need us to do because we have the people that's coming to have the conversation. I'm doing the reminders. I'm doing all the fancy smancy stuff. And y'all know we simple people out here. So subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Tell somebody, come in and join the community we are yet building. We will continue to build once we have the guests that are going to come in to speak with us. We are recording on a Friday. You know we love our Fridays. Hey, hey. Fridays, hey, hey. Fridays, why? Because we're going to get some rest on the weekend to take care of our mental wellness situationships. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They situationships only because, so that I explained this to y'all. They become journeys when we are as consistent as we want to be. There's situationships when life comes in and kind of ebbs and flow, and then we have to restart a couple of times. So yeah,
That's right.
we building, we building, we building, we're building. Listen, we got a dude in the house. What you talking about? Y'all heard me say that the last
Right?
time that there's a dude coming, Miss Styles, and the dude is here. Can you see
They
him?
thought we only had girlfriends. You know what I'm saying? So
They think we only know positive women, and we told y'all, nope, no ma'am, no sir. And so, because we are women of our word, the brother is here with us. So, Miss Sounds, who do we have today?
we have an amazing, amazing, just impactful Black man in the
Mm.
community, in the world. It's Mark Rumnett. Everybody, air claps,
What?
air claps, air
What?
claps.
Oh, y'all don't know who that is? That's why you have to stick around. That is why you have to not only listen, but you got to tune in to the video on YouTube because we funny. We know we funny. We smart and we bring the humor and we educate you at the same time. So join Mr. Mark Rumnett, sir. I need you to tell the
Yeah.
people who you are because you're not just a Black man. I know that's how we did the intro. We meant to do it that way. But who are you and what do you do, sir? Tell us.
My name is Mark Rumney. I am a young African American male, born and raised in New York City, and currently resides in the Hudson Valley. And my occupation is an education administrator that I've been working at since 2016. But before then, I was an educator, a coach, um, a business owner, uh, a faithful man, just all around active and I love my family, love my wife, and involved with my kids.
All right. Do
Mm.
y'all see the Black Love plug in there? Okay, just take it in.
Told you in the world, impactful in the world. I told you.
Yeah, yeah. They know we love all love, but we love black love because we black. If you look it, if you okay, video plug again, watch the videos. Okay. So I had to the man shouted out his wife. That's all I want to say. Because all y'all out there who married something, y'all only shout out the children. Mm. Y'all only shout out the legacy, but how did it become a legacy without the woman? Okay, I'm gonna stop. Miss Sounds, I'm starting with you people. So tell them hey, hi, hello, and give them the word of the day while I do my breathing.
What's up, everyone? It's your girl Miss Sounds here. Y'all already know how we do it. We start with the word of the day to just get the palate wet a little bit, before we get into a deep dive conversation with our guests. So, Mark, I'm going to read something. I'm going to read a quote. And then each of us is going to go around and really talk about what that means for us in this moment right now. The quote is from the late and great Howard Thurman. Keep alive the dream, for as long as a man has a dream in his heart, he cannot lose the significance of living.
Say it again, Miss Sounds. I need a retake of that. Do that again.
So keep alive the dream, for as long as a man has a dream in his heart, he cannot lose the significance of living.
Man, Mr. Mark, what does that say to you? Is that hitting anything?
I'm familiar with the concept of dreaming and keeping hope alive and having something to move your heart towards. I'll give you another reference to Langston Hughes. He talked about life is like a flying bird, but a broken wing. You'll lose your dreams. I forget the specific quote, but Langston Hughes talked about that. Life is like dreams, but I'll have to look it up. But if you have a broken wing, you cannot fly. And yeah, I constantly have dreams, and I constantly encourage the people that I work with to have dreams, and to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
I think there's another quote as well by Malcolm X who talked about that as well. Moving towards the future. Prepare today for a future tomorrow. Those who are not prepared today will not be ready for tomorrow. So yeah, I'm very familiar with that kind of language.
Sure, absolutely.
Go ahead, Miss Sound, but we're gonna come back to that point because I feel like I want to do a little devil advocate moment because we got a guy on here, but I ain't gonna start it.
I agree. I think that the quote speaks to what I feel like when he says dreaming. I also believe that it's referencing hope in a better future. I look at it as, for me, there's this desire for just restoration of things that are broken. And I think that it's good to have the hope while you still grieve a world that is not yet whole, So that's where what I get from it.
Yeah. I'm going to save mine to the end because I got questions that will not rest.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mark, as a young Black African-American professor and administrator, father, still a coach, because I know you still do coaching when the time avails itself, man of faith, look at all those titles. What does dreaming mean for you now versus when you started the journey of obtaining all those titles?
Dreaming means to me now, just setting small goals each day, getting up and thanking God that I'm awake, and setting those small goals that might surround my community, might surround my family, might surround some of the things I enjoy. Our time is limited, and I'm on the back half of my career. So, my dreams might not have gone beyond 20, 30 years, we just, thinking out that far. um, is well in the distance. So I like to keep them within 5 year, 10 year increments, and that keeps me motivated, to cast on or to think about the next opportunity, the next dream. Um, so I tend to not have them too far spread out.
And so what empowered or motivated this acceptance of dreaming and setting the goals? And the reason why I ask is because you turn the news on, you're not hearing of us in our communities setting goals and obtaining them or going after them. You are going to be met with a lot of stories about us not apparently being dreamers, not planning, not preparing, not developing any strategy to make sure our lives 4 or 5 years down the line has meaning. You're a Black man and you're saying that, goal and dreaming has always been a part. Now I do it in a shorter stint, but I still do it. So I want to know what caused that to even be a factor in your life, that you started to dream or thought dreaming had some powerful things in there so that you would incorporate that in your life. Who gave you that? Did you just get up one day and had it? Was there somebody that influenced or empowered you? I mean, we want you to talk real to the people because we don't have a lot of dudes on here, so we got some dude questions.
I guess it started when I was young. I come from an impoverished situation, and I've always thought about, how do I improve my. I did not have the language as a kid to understand that, but I knew that the current environment that I was in was difficult, tough. To think about how do I get out of it, right? How do I not be in this kind of environment? And as you start to fantasize, right, you want to turn those fantasies into actions and what is practical, right? What is doable? One of the things that, to my realization really quickly as a young kid was education, right? Going into getting an education was critical because I remember in the second grade, thinking a little bit back, I could not read or write. I was falling behind my peers. And my mother told me, we're going to move schools. We're going to move you from one school to a new school to hopefully get you back on track. And I was, bussed out of, Brownsville, Brooklyn. If you know anything about Brownsville, Brooklyn, it's in the heart of the borough of Brooklyn in New York City. And I was shipped all the way to the coast, to the shores in Bay Ridge, literally on the last stop of the train, right next to a bridge called the Verrazano Bridge. And that's where I was schooled. Um, it did give me a fighting chance, right? It gave education, and it taught me how to read and some of those things that I was missing earlier, I was now getting, and I saw that in action, right? I saw, making that sacrifice at that time, even though it was difficult, right? I was away from my friends. Um, I was no longer in a neighborhood. I had to go into a different neighborhood, but I saw what the impact was, I saw the impact directly on me, right? I was now able to perform in the classroom, you know, teachers were giving me compliments. And I was like, wow, there's something to this, right? Changing the environment, maybe finding success. And that was the early stages of that transformation of thinking about, okay, what else can I do that's practical or can help me get to where I want to go?
Yeah, I like that. And Miss Sounds, I'm gonna have you jump in here, but as you were talking, sort of part of what came in my mind is mom broke a generational curse that could have continued on you by
Right.
saying, let me make this change. Let's try a new thing or a different thing. And so that's a big compliment to mom. That's a big compliment to parents who are invested enough in their child that even while we're yet surviving, I know something's going on with my baby. And I'm fitting to do something to change that landscape real estate for him or her, because they need to have a better fighting chance while I still do what I have to do to make sure we're okay. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to just shout out moms and parents on a whole, grandparents too, who are also in that fight, to say that we salute you for exactly what Mr. Mark said his mom did, because you care enough and you love enough to say, let's try something else. So, Miss Sound, I know you got some burning
Yeah.
question because they say education and you ready to jump up.
Yeah. I'm interested. I'm interested, Mark, in when you just explained sort of being in second grade and falling behind. I think a lot about what that feels like in terms of feeling excluded in some way, right? I'm not up to speed with everyone else in some case. I have to go the extra mile somewhere else to get my needs met so that I can be up to speed. So I see exclusion in some way a part of that narrative as a young child, but also as a like a Black person. Do you see these themes of kind of feeling excluded in different areas of your life, or have you seen it in different areas of your life?
Mm.
Of me being excluded?
Yeah, just your
Or
story. Yeah, and yeah, in terms of your story, your identity growing up, and just having had some challenges in the beginning, learning with different things. Yeah,
oh yeah, being the underdog is a history that I've become familiar and live in. Having to prove myself, right?
yeah,
To beat back some of the naysayers, and not fulfilling the stereotype, right? The stereotype
yeah,
of who you are just because of your appearance.
yeah,
You're constantly working, but I've never let it overwhelm me, or get me down, or depress me, um, because inside intrinsically I had a self-worth that I knew, I was something. It might not be what society wanted me to be, but I'm alive and well,
yeah,
and I was able to live in that space. There are some people who can't live in that space, right? Can't live. They're looking for acceptance. I don't know. I just never had that need to, I guess because of that early experience, and I give you another thing on top of that early experience, being in the second grade and moving. As a young kid, we constantly moved around as well because of
mm,
housing insecurity. So, I never really gravitated or had an attachment to anything, right? I kind of still live that out in my life. But later on, my wife constantly says to me, "You're a slash and burner. You just
Yeah.
go," because I have no attachments, right? And that's how I grew up, right?
mm,
I didn't have, a history of an attic with loads of photos and antiques and things of that nature. I guess for me that's an advantage, right? Because I can disconnect. I can feel okay about that. Some people can't. Um, so
mm,
yeah, so those experiences kind of culminated into this life I have today. I'm not afraid of losing anything.
mm,
All these things are temporal, right? And as I started to get more closer to my faith, it teaches you that don't
Yeah.
hold on to anything. The only thing you should be
mm,
holding on to is the Lord. So
mm,
so I was practicing that, even though I wasn't necessarily a follower of the
mm.
Lord at that time, right? It took some time for me to get there. But
Yeah,
yeah, those are some of the experiences that kind of
yeah.
helped me navigate those kinds of feelings.
So how does that transfer over? Because you're using the word underdog and you haven't been an educator and now
That's the protein.
an administrator in that space. Do you ever have a trigger when you're helping a student or someone that is in your realm of work that appears to be an underdog or labeled that way generally? Is that a trigger for you? Do you feel that, I don't know, that fight to have to make sure they win?
Yes. Yes, it's a trigger. It's an action word for me, actually.
Mm,
What kind of resources, what kind of help can we bring to bear on this situation to help this particular student? Um, yeah, it definitely is a trigger word. It's a triggering experience, right? Yeah, I identify exactly with what you're going through. Um, here's the steps that I can offer or can talk to you about. And then obviously it's up to you to make that choice, what you want to do. I constantly work from that lens. You identify, you empathize, and then you take action, right?
Mm.
So what do
Yeah.
you do with the adverse reaction to that same said underdog? I identify, know what you're going through. Here's a list of resources. And even while you've said it's up to them to take action, it must feel a bit of a burden if that person doesn't rise to even look at the resources or do anything. Because like you said, you kind of still feel you're a bit of an underdog, or you've come from that lens. And so it's got to be a bit of a heartache for an educator if, you know what I mean? I just know you, the underdog, could rise and win. I've given you all this stuff, but you going in the opposite direction, bro. Like, what are we doing? Like,
Oh, I've seen that. I've seen that, and it's heartbreaking. It's sad. And yeah, I continue to, after I experienced something like that, a loss, where, a student has kind of navigated away from the help that we were, trying to give them. Yeah, it's sad, and you have to mourn that. You have to analyze that as well to see, is there something else you could have done? And then you have to continue to take action. You can't give up. You gotta move to the next one. Because unfortunately, in the world that we live in, and Miss Sound talked about it earlier, it's a broken world, right? And there are a lot of lives out there who need the assistance. So you can't
Mm.
stop. You keep going. You
Mm.
gotta.
Yeah.
go ahead, Miss Sounds.
And what would you say are some benefits of being the underdog? Because I know we celebrate them when they overcome and
Yeah.
beat the odds, but what are some of the benefits of being just overlooked in a lot lot of ways?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of benefits in
Okay,
that.
I mean, yeah.
Because you're constantly, but I guess one of the benefits, when you think about it, is you learn how to manage limited resources, right? You learn how to manage what you have, and you learn how to appreciate what you have. So you make the best of, a bad circumstance, right? Turn lemons into lemonade. That's the old phrase that they're using now. Lemons into lemonade. Let's make the best out of this, out of circumstance. There are people around the world where, kids are playing with a paper bag, and that's the happiest they'll ever be. That's the happiest moment for them, right? At that time and that condition. So being an underdog, you can learn that value and learn how to live in that value. But yeah, once you start thinking about the world and comparing it to other things, then that's where you run into trouble. Because then you start to think about what I don't have as opposed to what I do have. So those are some of the things you have to grapple with.
So personal question. Yeah. I need to get the camera to zoom in here. No. So if you mentioned that you came from a challenging area, lived in a challenging neighborhood, and you became an educator, I am wondering if there's a correlation directly between how I grew up and what I became, or was it just happenstance that life led me into an educator, coming from this second grade experience, which you can remember so clearly, that reading and writing was extremely difficult. So how does the second grader, who reading and writing is a massive difficulty, become an educator? Like, what? Tell us.
That's a project.
Give us a synopsis of the project.
Right. That's a project, just, I don't know, later on in life, later on in my young educational experience, as I began to read and as I began to do math and as I began to find success in those things, I found inspirational people along the way who kind of started triggering, maybe this is a path I should go into. I had a non-official mentor, who really um, guiding me. And I remember one time him telling me, because I was working with him, and I said, I'm interested in doing something like this. And he says, well, why would you do manual labor when you can use your brain? Your brain lasts longer than manual labor. And it triggered something to me like, wow, you're so right. And this is coming from someone who practiced manual labor, right? He was a carpenter. He built buildings and things of that nature. I found that great, but he said, my body is breaking down and I can only go for so long. And then once this is over for me, how else am I gonna sustain myself? So he says, your brain can go for as long as you can keep it sharp, right? And I thought, wow, what an insightful comment. And from then on, I was like, all right, I'm sold. I'm going to head down this path of education and start to work with people and get educated myself and continue to practice, So those are some of the moments that kind of help push me in that direction.
Yeah. I love that. But also you had to have been a good soil. Because someone could tell me to go be a gymnast. That ain't happening. Right. So, but you were good soil for him to have planted that idea because it took root, because there was something in you that was ready enough to receive that, for you to then go and investigate and go down that road. So that's awesome. Go ahead, Miss Sounds.
Talk to us about the importance of mentorship, especially coming from a marginalized community. How important is mentorship? And, how was it important for you? And how is it important for the younger generation?
Funny enough, we call it the term mentorship, right? Our modern society refers to it as mentorship, but it's always been in our community. As the Black community, we've always learned from our elders. We've always practiced those things, whether it's oral history or written history. It was always passed down from generation to generation. Somewhere along the line or somewhere along the way in our modern society, we've become disconnected. So now we've reinvented this term that, us as a history, as a people, have had it in our lineage for hundreds and thousands of years. And now in this modern society, we say, okay, now it's going to be mentorship. It's no different than what we were practicing in the past, right? Taking someone by the hand, leading them through and walking them through, whatever it is they're trying to get through or get to. That is so important. We know that works, right? All the data, all the pieces you want to read talks about how mentorship works. It's just we don't practice it enough, right? In our modern society, we're taught in capitalism, we're taught the individual. Capitalism is always built around the individual idea and the individual ideology. But, if you want to be successful in a capitalist society, getting groups and getting mentored and working together helps lead to more success or leads to success. But, sometimes we're convinced that the individual is more important and we want to do it on our own. And that's a situation where there's more failure, right? There's a higher rate of failure in that situation. Not saying that people can't be successful going out on their own, just saying that if I had someone to show me how to do what you're doing, would I be more successful in doing that? Absolutely.
Yes.
Goes back to ancient times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like
why are we not doing it?
Yeah. Do you feel like competition and like you said, capitalism, but also competition has disconnected us? What has disconnected us where we don't see that we've been doing this the whole time?
Yeah, it's all that. It's right. It's the individual. It's the individual. Like the focus more on the individual and what the individual can accomplish as opposed to what a community or a group of people can accomplish. Yeah, that's all it is about today. Whether it's TV, media, social media, all these platforms talk about the individual. Me, I. Yeah, you can get there too. You can still be you can still have your own identity and still be within a team, right? Because every team player has a specialty, has a skill, and they bring them all together to work as a team to achieve whatever goal it is. You can still be your own individual, but there are some people who, they let that overcome them and they try to, be more individual than as opposed to working constructively in a team.
Yeah. That's good. I don't know if I've heard many people, many males, many professionals say that in culture and families we've been doing it, but we're just calling it mentorship now. I don't know if much people would say that out loud, because we tend to hear these words mentorship and activism and community, and we just pick them up and we run with them. But it's a good reflection and reminder, as you're saying, that, in a lot of cultural settings, we've been doing that. We've been show and tell for a long time. A lot of show and tell and a lot of demo without having to put a special word on it to motivate someone. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't think of that. So something a lot of people would not know about you is that you're a history buff.
Oh yeah.
So can we learn something about our history that's not spoken about often? Is there something you can tell us where, most textbooks say bada bada ba, but truly it is da 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 about, and let's say about Black history. Is there one that you think gets messed up, and the truth is XYZ? I mean, it's organic. You didn't know I was going to ask you this question.
No, I didn't know. You put me on the spot.
He's sweating, guys. He's just like, oh man, I'm supposed to be prepared.
I wasn't prepared for that question. The one thing I've been thinking about lately, and this is historical, right? Is this concept of mass deportation and mass immigration, and that's what I'm hearing lately. And historically, if you look at it, it's happened many, many times before in American history. Whether you're talking about the Chinese building railroads in California and being, utilized as labor and then sent back to China, whether it's the Mexicans in the 1920s, whether it's, the Japanese being rounded up in World War II. We've heard these trigger words. I guess it's easy to stoke fear in people with those things, but we have to really be careful when we start to use language like that, because that goes down a slippery slope. Again, it leads back to what Miss Sound was saying about marginalized people, isolated people, exploiting, exploitation. Those things are very dangerous. So as I hear certain language coming up, at this time and at this moment, it concerns me. It definitely concerns me. And for those who, say, well, it won't affect me. They're not talking about me. In history, there is a time where people would say, it doesn't affect me until it actually does affect me, right? Until they come for you,
Yeah.
Then it starts to change, and then your apathy for it changes at that point. So just leaning on a little bit of history, whether it's whether it's Black history, whether it's whatever history we're talking about, we've heard this language before. This is nothing new. We just have to be careful that those things don't happen again, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You study history so you don't repeat the mistakes of the past. So that's why I get a little nervous when I start to hear language like that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's why we're studying history, because some people's intent to study history is to replicate it in a way to keep them in power. And I'm gonna leave the thought right there.
Do you find that in your exploration of history that you see a thread of just interconnectedness just between humanity? And do you have those moments where you're like, oh wow, there's a huge connection. We're all connected. It does affect us. Do you have had those moments in exploring history?
Oh, absolutely, all the time, right? There. I guess it's only in the recent modern era, when we're fighting for resources and we're fighting for what's limited left on this earth, right? And fighting for that we see this interconnectedness in our past, but now as those resources are becoming limited, we're seeing less of it, right? We're seeing less of that interconnected, or people at least prescribing that you don't need as much of that, or there is not as much of that, but it is there, right? It's still part of our history, is part of who we are. So yeah, we have to fight to kind of push back on some of the narratives that are happening today, as far as isolationism.
Yeah.
Just being trapped in your own small world. Yeah, there's a difference. I always talk about, there's a difference between not knowing, and then once you find out or know, you try to do better.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that the students that, and I'm just going to focus mostly on the male students that you interact with, is there a focus on, like, if you ever get into a conversation with a young male about any part of our Black history, I'm specifically talking about, is there one ideology that pops up that most of our young male believe that you have to tell them, let me shed some light on what is true, because that what you're saying is a bit twisted or misunderstood?
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. Supporting them and help, again, not knowing. So they'll come to university, not knowing. And then they'll be informed, and then they'll come to me and say, hey, I thought about this. What do you think? I said, well, it's not about what I think. It's about what are you experiencing, right? What did you see, and how are you connecting this and relating this to who you are? And then, you see the light bulb go off. You see them start to change their behavior or change what it is they were doing, and start working differently. Yeah, we have conversations like that all the time at the university with students of color. Our young male students, a lot of them suffer from, again, isolationism, right? Just being alone and not having support and not having anyone to talk to them. Again, lack of mentorship, right? Whether it's absence in the household, whether it's absence in the community, those things impact, what they're believing. And then when they start to meet people who, I always get the cold shoulder in the beginning, like, who are you? What are you about? Why are you talking to me?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. I can show you some things, son. I can show you some things, like, give me a chance. I'm not here for anything, to harm you. I'm not here to harm you or do anything negative to you. I'm here to talk to you. I'm here to guide you. And there's always a bit of resistance in the beginning, but in the end, we work it out.
Yeah, because they don't know where you're coming from. Because you're well put together, sir, when we see you in the community. So they're just like, well, what could he say to me? I mean, he's been okay his whole life, right? Until you choose to figure out what you need to say individually. And then they probably, their eyes probably pop open like, oh, wait a minute, there was a starting ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. Sam.
How do you have you made history a relevant thing that people should know? Because I know that there is a perspective of history that it's old, it's in the past, I don't need to really dig back there kind of thing. At least I've heard that. I'm just, I'm saying, on the streets they said that. but
History streets, Miss Sound. History streets.
They had told me that, why don't you know that? It's the past, right? So how are we to help it be a relevant thing for our young people and for older people that really don't know the fullness of their history?
For our young students, obviously, we try to find touch points where we can connect with them, right? And then we'll draw the line back and say, hey, so currently we'll try to find a connection point that they're, most interested in, and then I'll say, okay, now we're going to do this examination. You're going to work backwards and see how far back you go. And that kind of helps them get to that realization that, wow, there is a line drawn from my starting point right now back. And that generally, gets them into research, gets them into digging up things. We do in my program, we do a heritage paper. And a heritage paper requires them to go back in their history, in their family history, to learn about things about their family and about, themselves, what they can gather, right? And it takes them as far back as they can go. For some, it ends, pretty shortly. Others, it goes back much, much further. But then when they come back, they say, I didn't realize all these things. That's number one. And number two, they say, I have a better appreciation for some of the older people in my family, some of the seniors, because I got to sit down and talk to them and got to listen to what they had to offer. And now, obviously, there are mistruths and there are all kinds of complexities in our families that generally we might want to hide or not want to talk about, but they can still draw that line back and, and talk about who these people were and have appreciation for them. We're not trying to get into the messiness, right? The messiness of some of our past, but just to know, right? And even for our students who are from a foster care system or from, some other system where they have a limited history, I say, well, then what about the people who have been in your life, right? They count as family too. We have family, and I use the air quotes as in those who we were born into or born with. And then there's the non-traditional family, right? We have non-traditional family, and they are just as valuable. They are people too. They help to raise us. As that old African proverb says, it takes a village. We were not all blood relatives in that village, but we all work together to raise that child, right?
Yeah.
So you can dig into those things too as well.
Just a follow-up to that, do you find that there are any difficulties when there are students or people traveling back to their heritage through their heritage and there's a lot of trauma there? Do you have any ways to really deal and help people through that?
Oh yeah, there's lots of that, and we obviously work with the Psychological Counseling Center on campus to help them navigate those things and to talk to them about, and I always try to talk to students and say, hey, look, that was an experience, whether it affected you or whether it affected a family member, but that was that experience for that moment, right? Don't hold on to that, keep it at that moment in time and keep working towards it and helping them process those things. That's very sensitive. And we do find a lot of that along the way. And, there's a lot of counseling that comes along with that as well, too. And that's why we want them to dig, because sometimes you can't move forward unless you resolve some of those issues, right? And know where they're coming from and know what's triggering those things inside you.
Yeah, it kind of go back, Miss Sounds. We've been talking with a couple of previous guests about the barrier that silence has created that allows traumas to be held as friends and not enemies. And it's like, wow, I never thought of it going into a university. You've got your whole life ahead of you. And then you do have to kind of peel back some layers as you're going through that new leg of the journey, and the traumas that can show up because of that. Because
and they can
oftentimes, go ahead.
Yeah, they can stop you in your tracks and cause you to finish. And if you don't process those things and you don't get help walking through those things, and that processing might take some time, but if you're dealing with it right and you're processing it, it'll help you move forward, right? And that comes with a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling. Like immediately, one of the things that we do in the program is we introduce our students to the counseling center, and we introduce them to the staff of the counseling center. These are some important people, and they are available to you. Utilize them when necessary. And then when the recommendations come, they know who these people are. They've seen them before. They've been presented in front of them, and the trust might not be there initially, but because they've seen them, because they're familiar with who they are, they can take that step forward towards the trust.
Yeah, I like that, because I don't know if many people talk about that in terms of someone entering into a university or college life. I mean, we hear all the bad and the negative, but we don't hear that there's help on the campus. I don't hear anyone saying that.
There's help. Obviously, it's a work in progress, and we're seeing more and more students now than ever before coming in with mental concerns, like mental health concerns, or they're developing them in college. And there's a study by the Journal of Psychiatry that talks about when does mental health issues show up for students, and they said the highest rate of mental health concerns that show up for students is between the ages of 18 and 25. Between 18 and 20 is when you'll start to realize, or you'll start to see someone experiencing mental health issues, whether it's trauma, whether it's conditional, whether it's something that's happening within inside them. I
agree with that. I always say it's very important for parents of today to have a strategic, logical outlet for their child. Like, implement it as soon as possible. Because if you don't, and they find their own outlet, and they're going through traumatic situations that they don't even understand they're going through, that's a lot of negative layering. So give them enough options as they're growing up to have some outlets, and hope to God that if later down they start going through traumatic things, because they already have some outlets, that they will continue to use those outlets to allow the healing process to be more consistent. So, all right, future writers, we're going to go ahead, Mr. Mark.
And I was saying that's where mentoring comes in, right? Because mentors can help walk you through some of those issues too, as well, because they're an independent party, an independent source, come with a different view. They can coach you through those things. And that's what we lean on. We lean on our mentors, whether it's peer-to-peer mentors, right? Where peer-to-peer, there's different values there. They can relate to each other. And then there's peer-to-adult mentorship, right? That's a different level of mentorship. Those two things working in combination helps to mold, helps to grow, and helps to get them where they want to go.
Yeah, I love that. So Future Risers, we're going to end part 1 here, because, if we keep going, it'll be over an hour. So Mr. Mark is going to come back for part 2, and we'll continue with trying to give you the conversation in chunks because it's a heavy topic, but an important topic. And we don't want to cut it short, but we want to give you in stages so that it's easier for you to digest and ask the questions that you will in the comment. So we will do Rise and Fall on the part 2 And then Azali will attempt the word of the day on part 2. I said attempt because I feel I'm in the class, I feel I want to learn today more than I want to think. So we will see what you get in part 2. So please come back and join us, and we'll see you soon in part 2. Bye, guys.
Bye.